Hey guys, welcome to episode 125 of Project Geekology. We have a very special show today. We're talking Andor Season 2, specifically the last 6 episodes. So we are completing our Andor discussion this week. I'm one third of your host, Dakota. I'm joined as always with...
Rhydonium! Every day, more lies. This is Anthony. Yes, we are covering Andor. Super excited. And, joining us as always is...
Rich. What's going on, guys? I'm very excited to really jump into this. I think maybe the best half season of a show I've ever seen.
I think it might be the best half season of a show, period. I think I mentioned it on the podcast before, but the last 5 episodes of Andor, from episode 8 to episode 12, are the only the only consecutive live action episodes in a TV show to rate over 9.5 on IMDb, which is just a staggering score because everybody knows Star Wars Online is very polarized. So it's very unlikely that could ever happen, but this show really is that good. So if you haven't seen it and you're allowing yourself to be spoiled, just step away for a little bit. Watch Andor.
Yes.
It's very good.
Yes, actually, before we hop into the stuff that we've been into, definitely go check the show notes, and we will place the timestamp for when the discussion actually starts. So go head on over there right now if you want to skip what we've been up to. It won't hurt our feelings. We won't know. But yes.
It'll hurt. It'll hurt.
Speak for yourself, man. Like, honestly. I have about 17 minutes of baseball talk that I'm about to get into, guys.
Yeah.
So strap in, baby.
We're in mid-discussion of moving Rich over to a baseball
Rich
podcast.
Rich and the Rumble Ponies, a podcast only about the Binghamton Mets, the AA level team. So if you guys want to check that out, just search that up.
There you go.
Perfect.
Since we're on you, Rich, why don't you tell us what you have been up to?
Whoa. So in the time that we have talked, Charlie, actually, my son, graduated from K-5, 5th grade. I'm sure you're all excited. But what you really care about is that
I'm excited.
I decided that it was time for his half birthday gift because we had already got him a graduation gift. And I went ahead and got him a Switch 2.
Nice. Yeah, I remember you mentioning that the last episode.
Yeah, so I finally got to pick it up on June 20th. I picked it up. I got a hand me up, so I got the Switch 1 now, which is great
Switch.
Because, this kid, he had lent it to me last summer early on, and I was trying to... I didn't want to say I was going to 100% Breath of the Wild, but I wanted to explore it. I wanted to get deep into it. I wanted to just really play it like I would say Red Dead Redemption. And he's like, "Oh, you got enough hearts, you could be Ganon." And he directed me to because he had already beat it. And he was playing, he wanted to play Tears of the Kingdom. So he kind of rushed me through it. So I'm really happy now because I've been playing it.
Now you can actually breathe Breath of the Wild.
I never had the online account. I had it under... Oddly, I was umbrellaed under his account, and then I finally kind of got a family account, so now I have my own proper thing, and he's got his Switch 2. He's got the expansion pack, so he got the upgrades for Breath of the Wild and for Tears of the Kingdom. So he's been playing that again, and actually he's playing Wind Waker now, but the load times are... it's crazy. I really if you have the money... And even though the lineup right now is not super star-studded, that I don't think you have to run out and get it, I will say that the way that the controllers attach and detach the Joy-Cons are so much better. It's like a button kind of magnet thing that kind of snaps on and off instead of doing the sliding.
Oh, okay.
Because we had gotten some third-party controllers and the actual...
The Joy-Cons, they don't...
And
they don't always fit
they'd slide off a little bit. It'd be really frustrating, and I really hated it. So I got that, and I paired it. My son had got me the N64 controller, so I was playing some Mario Kart at 64. So honestly, although I was really against getting it this early, seeing the this, yeah, just how much better it is in all aspects. Like the screen size is markedly bigger. I know I would watch my students play, like, I guess Mario Kart or whatever, when they had it propped up and they both had Joy-Cons. And it always seemed so silly because it's such a silly, tiny screen compared to what we play on now. And this seems less silly. If you're sitting there with the PAL just in the middle of nowhere or whatever, and you set up, it doesn't seem as absurd. The screen size is nicer. The Joy-Cons are heftier. They feel nice in your hands.
And Charlie's happy.
Yeah, no, he's ecstatic. I have a Switch One now, which I'm despite all the upgrades that I'm touting, I really like the Switch One. I'm gonna buy Mario Odyssey. So by the next time that we cover, I'll probably have some thoughts on a game that's
Awesome.
12 years old.
Which
Excellent.
I actually think that also got an upgrade for the Switch too.
Oh,
Yeah. I think that one's running at 60 frames. I know that Pokemon Scarlet and Violet also got some really big upgrades now, like more Pokemon spawn. It runs at like 60 frames. Like there's a lot of games that came out on the first Switch that, as much as I love the Switch for its innovation, really hindered the potential that a lot of these games had because of how underpowered it is. And, compared to a lot of stuff that's out, it's still underpowered, but I would say that still, a lot of these games like Tears of the Kingdom, that game is amazing, but I remember, telling myself like, dude, this game is not meant for the first Switch. It's just not. It could be looking so much better if we had something that was a little bit stronger to support it. And now, I've seen that it looks a lot better on the Switch too.
Excellent. Anthony, what else? What have you been up to?
Honestly, not all that much, man. I've got a couple, or I have a convention that's coming up in a couple weeks, SuperCon, and I got press passes for that. So there'll definitely be either like a mini-sode or a discussion on that. And yeah, man, I'm pretty stoked to go to that. And I feel like honestly, and I know you feel this, I feel like there's something else that I have to say, but I just don't remember. And at some point I'll either remember during the podcast, like I did. Remember that one time I was like, oh yeah, I saw the Minecraft movie and I forgot to mention it in the beginning.
Yeah.
It's something like that's going to happen.
Okay.
So
I mean, I know you're heavily invested in the Marvel TV shows right now. Have you been watching any of Ironheart?
Dude, like we talked about we had that whole discussion on Captain America 4, and I'm just largely kind of disillusioned with the MCU. I think that we just need a break from it for a little while. I think that they need to go back to the drawing board and really like try to figure out where their direction is. But on the other hand, which is kind of crazy because, we got Star Wars. We've been having consistent Star Wars for, the last 10 years now? I mean, sure, we had Clone Wars and Rebels that came out during, like, the period between 2005 and 2015, but it wasn't as consistent as what we're getting now within these, like, past 10 years from, The Force Awakens up until now. And, even though that, yes, Star Wars has definitely had a lot of stinkers, I am still hanging around for a lot of their stuff. And, we're about to talk about arguably, like, the greatest Star Wars show that's out. So I'm definitely excited to dive into that. What about you, Dakota? What have you been up to?
Well, yeah, I'm excited to talk about Andor as well. I do think it is the current bar for the quality standards that can be met within the Star Wars galaxy. It doesn't need to always be that mature, it doesn't always need to be that level of production quality, but it can be. And that's something that we didn't know before. And I feel like it's something that I think a lot of people are going to expect, hopefully, moving on. And hopefully the studio also expects, quality of that standard, because that will help push better content out. Speaking about hopefully better content, there's a rumor going around that Obi-Wan Season 2 has been greenlit. I don't know if Rich has seen that news yet.
Did see it online. I don't know if it was a troll or not, because I just briefly saw it and I saw some responses to it.
I do think I trust the person who reported it. It's Daniel RPK. He's been in the Scoop game for a while now, and yeah, I trust a lot of his reporting. Even if it doesn't come to fruition, I do believe that there are talks being had for a potential Obi-Wan season 2.
Yeah, I think that even goes like as far back as the original, like when that series first dropped, because remember it was originally slated as a limited series and then they dropped that limited part to it.
Yeah, so, it was almost like maybe we'll continue?
So potentially, I mean, maybe they'll they had something going with Obi-Wan. Maybe if they tackle some of the issues that they had in the first season, it could have a really good second season.
Yeah, no, they definitely. It can be good, it can be done. Obi-Wan's a great character. He's got a lot of hidden stories that we have no idea about. I just hope it's really good. Anywho, I don't have too much going on right now. The reason we were off last week, I think Rich was also busy, but not so busy that he couldn't record. I was frantically studying for a test that I took over this past weekend, and that's over, so I'm feeling a lot better. I don't have to study like crazy anymore. Don't know if I passed yet, but I'm pretty sure I did. So that was good, and it's for my job basically. And next week I'm going to be away. It's not going to be a normal podcast like we, instead of the topics that we normally cover. I'm going to be in Disney World. So I'm going to be having a lot of fun elsewhere in the world. And by elsewhere, I mean Florida. But yeah, I think that's all that I got going on right now. Anyone else want to bring... Oh, Rich, you did watch Ironheart. You want to touch on that briefly?
Yeah, I think it's actually the best piece of Marvel TV in quite a while.
Yeah?
It's got... Unfortunately, I watched 3 episodes. I watched 4 episodes. I watched the first 3 on the drop, and then I watched the 4th one. My family had been behind me. So I watched the 4th one with them when it came out at 9 o'clock on the first night. And then my son had to go to bed. So I went to sleep, and I accidentally scrolled through Twitter and spoiled one of the major kind of points, I think, in the last 3 episodes. But I ended up still really liking it. I mean...
Is it a point with Sacha Baron Cohen?
Yes.
I have no idea what it is.
Well, so, but I think it has some pretty big implications. I wonder how they're going to treat it. I'm curious to see if... I don't know if it's going to be really required viewing, but I think it's way better than, let's say, Echo. Like, Echo was fine, and I got some lore on a character that I didn't really care to find lore about.
How do you feel it compares to Daredevil? Because I know that you like Daredevil Born Again quite a bit.
Definitely different shows. I mean, Daredevil's like Law and Order SVU, superhero edition. And this is definitely different. I kind of liken it in a way, but I think it's better than Miss Marvel. I also have a special place in my heart for Riri as well as Miss Marvel, because they are 2 characters that had comic lines come out, and I started reading them from like the very beginning. And
right, so you fully know these.
Yeah,
characters.
Like they're not like the when they swapped out and they had what's his name, Amadeus Cho as Hulk, and they had Jane Foster as Thor. Like, I like that these are separate characters essentially,
and new characters. Yeah,
and I really like Riri Williams, so I thought this is a really fun exploration, and it's again another Marvel show that does deal with grief and the grieving process, because what is grief but love persevering? So what is Marvel but love of comics persevering through bad movies sometimes and shows to reward you with something that's actually kind of fun. So anyone out there who hasn't seen it and is on the fence about it, I would actually say that it's a really fun way to spend 6 hours.
Cool. All right, you guys ready to talk about some Calcite and Rhydonium?
Yes, sir.
And a little bit of Rogue One, because I think each of us rewatched Rogue One after
Yes, definitely, man. Yeah, I wanted to save that part for the actual discussion, but yeah, definitely.
All right, so let's start with the first three episodes. We're now a year past the second arc, the weird arc where everyone was high for some reason. And now we are now we actually have to deal with some major issues in the galaxy. The Empire is playing its hand. No more time is being allotted to finding Kalkite alternatives. They're going all in. They need what's under the surface of Gorman. What is your favorite episode, guys? Of these last 6 episodes, where do you sit? What are your favorites?
The episode...
Start with you, Anthony. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Rich.
As they're taking... When Andor has to meet up with and take her.
Okay.
Like that... I remember we were... I forgot what we were covering, but I had spoken about watching it in the moment and how, like, that was one of the most... I never thought that, like, the Senate would get me excited, but here we are. I was on the edge. What's absolutely insane is I obviously knew that she was going to make it, right? But I still was like, oh man, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? And like that's a testament to Tony Gilroy, right?
Yeah, I mean, so Tony Gilroy was brought in late in the game when it comes to Rogue One. It had a number of drafts written, and the film had mostly been shot by the time Tony Gilroy showed up and just cleaned up the plot a little bit. And some people argue that like he should have gotten like a partial directing credit because of so much had changed with Rogue One. So it was really awesome seeing him take on the role of head writer for a show like this, for characters that we didn't think needed a show. Several, like almost 10 years after maybe not 10 years, but a good number of years after the fact that Rogue One was complete. It was such a strange thing to get Andor, and yeah, now we're actually like receiving some of the best TV that we've seen ever.
Right, and I've said this like multiple times, in this discussion, and even outside of this discussion, that Andor was definitely a series that nobody asked for, or maybe a small group of people. I'll give them that. There were a lot of there were some major Cassian Andor fans after Rogue One, but after you kind of talking about Tony Gilroy really taking the helm of this show, and we already loved what we had gotten with Rogue One. Imagine if he was there from the beginning, man. It would have been probably crazy, dude. Like that movie. But as far as like episodes, that the Mon Mothma one was really good. I really did like her monologue, and we finally got these two characters that we've they've been kind of like on different ends of the universe, and they're kind of like together now. It's that introduction. You finally got Cassian meeting Mon Mothma. Definitely episode 8 was huge. Episode 8, just like that one was like really, really tense. And it's such an insane thing to have, filmed. Right,
like the fact
right.
That they did it well. They did it, so believably. You can't take your eyes away from the screen, and as you see everything unfolding.
And it's so crazy with all the meta knowledge that you have, like something's about to go down, like that this is a trap, but these people don't know it's a trap. And then obviously the episode that I really liked a lot was the last episode. It rolled in so cleanly into Rogue One. Like, I mean, it rolled right into the movie.
And I didn't expect it to.
Right?
Not that I didn't expect the show to like work with the movie. I didn't expect that they were going to lead the finale of Andor directly into Rogue One. And I'm glad that they did, because there's so many little things within the series that we learn about Cassian, we learn about his backstory, and we would have previously just taken all of that for granted. The first thing that I think you'll notice when you rewatch Rogue One, you'll find a bunch of little things in there, like, oh yeah, how did he know about that? Or, oh yeah, he did mention stuff like that.
Yep.
Like
I thought the exact same thing, dude. It filled in so many holes.
when he goes to Tivik on the Rings of Kafrene and he goes, Galen Urso? You know, like, he already knows the name Galen Urso before Tivik brings it to his attention. And it's just like, oh yeah, how would he have known who this random guy on Edu was? You know, like, he's been, like, away. Galen Urso is a nobody, essentially, in the galaxy. Like, he hasn't ever been anything. And that's kind of the whole plot of Rogue One, is that not even his own daughter knows where this guy is. So, like, how would this random rebel know anything about Galen Urso? And it's just like, wow, okay. Because he found out from Luthen. You know?
Right, yeah. And it's crazy because, you know, Tivik being like that, he's that rebel that he shoots in the beginning of that movie. And, you know, they talk about him at the end of Andor, and you're like, ooh, man, I know what's about to happen to that guy.
Do you feel that the character of Andor is consistent, like fully consistent, throughout Andor and Rogue One? Or do you feel that some of the things that he does might feel a little bit more shallow in Rogue One just because he doesn't have that backstory?
I feel like I feel like Andor really cements why he does what he does in Rogue One because of everything he's gone through, man. He's gone through so much since the beginning of season 1, and a lot of it, dude, it's all been for the sake of the rebellion. You know, he got sold on it by Luthen, and by the end of it, Luthen, the guy that brought him into the fold, is dead, man. And so, like, he kind of carries that a little bit of a chip on his shoulder because he's like, you know, I've been doing this for so long. He sold out for it, man. He sold out for the rebellion. That's why it was so easy for him to, like, just kind of stage like his own little, like, you know, take his own little group to go to Scarif. Dude, that was such an Andor thing to do. Like, just to go and do his own thing. That's on track with what he does. And they were pretty much consistent with that's what he does. Like, he's part of the rebellion, but he's going to do his own thing a time or two. He will be a team player, but when he needs to do something, he'll do it, whether he gets the permission or not.
Yeah. Rich, did you notice anything from Rogue One that was heightened because of your viewing of Andor? I'm sure there's a couple things that, like, popped up.
Yeah, I mean, his motivations obviously are clearer and easier to kind of understand because, you know, you do have him, like, quickly killing so flippantly, and he seems very much like Luthen-esque in this idea that, you know, I do what I have to do and it doesn't matter. But now we know why he does what he has to do and why, you know, it's not even, it makes it more noble almost that he's doing this for somebody who left him, right? Essentially, like, he's creating that sunrise for somebody who
will say it, even though he won't.
You know, and that's because I think too often we get that hero who sacrifices his love, right? And that's kind of very tropey, and I like it. I like it way better this way. I think the only thing that maybe we don't get is he definitely feels more like Han in that he's, you know, hokey religions and ancient weapons are no match for a blaster, your side kid. Like, he feels that way more in Rogue One, and, you know, at the end of Andor, and that's obviously just because of the way they filmed it in the order, right? But he kind of seems to be a little bit more accepting of his role in the larger scheme of the Force, right? And I don't feel like that's something that continued, but it's such a hyper nitpick that I can't even fault them for it. You know, I like it. But I like that.
I guess you could take that thread and kind of expand on it, because when, you know, throughout the 2 seasons, Fourth of July. Well, it's not actually 4th of July, but I have a lot of fireworks.
I honestly
outside.
thought you had
It's the 2nd of July.
I thought we were going to hear fee, fi, fo, fum, and you had a giant sitting outside of your house knocking on the door. I didn't know what was happening, bro.
Oh my gosh. I don't even know what side of my house that came from.
Awesome.
All right. Sorry, guys.
No, you're good.
What was I even saying? I feel like I hope that doesn't keep happening. You can make that point that throughout the first 2 seasons he learns that he is this guy who has to get the job done, or has to get from point A to point B, or he has to like deliver a message, or he has to deliver a person. And sometimes he does that despite his better judgment and despite other people's permission. And
it's consistent with Rogue One because it's exactly what he does in Rogue One.
That's exactly what he does.
Yep.
Yeah,
He's a messenger.
He realizes that, the message that Jyn Erso has to say, or, like, is telling the rebellion is, the truth. It's something worth fighting for. And not only that, but the bigger message, which is, what Galen Erso wrote into the code for the construction of the Death Star, that's a message that needs to get to the rebellion so that they can end this thing for good. Because it's too big of a thing to succeed, basically. Like, the Death Star needed to be dealt with immediately, or else it would have become, like, just this huge tyrannical government across the galaxy, even worse than it already was. So
yeah.
I do, like, motivation wise, I do think that, you can spin it in a way where it's like, well, these things kind of make sense in retrospect, but if you are looking at the character's decisions in Rogue One as opposed to what he does in Andor, I feel like it's mostly pretty consistent, and I'm really pleased by that.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's jump back to the first 3 episodes. So we have what happens on Gorman, we have Mon Mothma's speech, and there's another episode. I forget what happens in the 7th episode. It's a shame because that episode was good, I remember, but like it's just so overshadowed by what happens. Andor season 2.
I have a hard time separating the episodes. They become so mushy.
Because okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's the messenger episode. It's where Cassian learns that, the Force is real, basically. And it's also like an episode that kind of highlights that Bix, it may be Force sensitive, because she says that she's felt it a couple times. Like, she's felt this inkling about, Cassian being something more important than, what he assumes that he is, and like apparently she's had dreams about this. She's really contemplating like what the deal is with this guy.
Right.
She finally brings him to a Force healer because he has some injury on his arm that we don't even know where it came from, a blaster shot that isn't healing or something. So they take him to this Force healer, and yeah, it becomes this like really weird scene. You guys want to like, what did you think of that scene?
I mean, it's very much like, it reminded me of times where, like, I'm guessing like almost like Harry Potter would meet someone and it was just this, there's something about you, like this very chosen one. It kind of jarred me a little bit at first because we haven't had any of that stuff, right, in this story.
Yeah, I think that was the first time the Force was brought up in both seasons, right?
Yeah. So it was definitely out of character almost for the show, and I wonder if they had left it out, if it would have been okay. I mean, it does explain away his penchant for being at the right place at the right time, right? And I'm not sure if they're just doing it as a way to kind of get out of that, if they're trying to ground it in some weird way. They're grounding it and making it more realistic by saying that it's because of a mystical force.
That's actually a funny way to put it. It's instead of, trying to rationalize it with real world concepts, they're using the physical boundaries of the Star Wars universe, which is makeup of the Force, to explain away how he has survived all of these events and like why he is so pivotal to all of this. And I really like that concept. I like the idea that he learns along with us that he is kind of a chosen one, and there's a couple chosen ones in this galaxy apparently, and they each kind of have their own path. And that's kind of the cool thing about the Force, is that it doesn't seem like it's only focused on the Skywalker family at this point, like this is more than just the Skywalker family. This is the Force trying to bring balance to the galaxy.
Right. Well, it's kind of going back to something that you had said before. It's that moment that really does establish Andor as a fulcrum in the Star Wars universe, you know, rather than rather than it being like a catalyst or him being a catalyst. He definitely is somebody that's essential for that to happen, you know. And yeah, I didn't that didn't bother me so much. I thought it was actually cool to see somebody that was a Force user that, I mean, maybe at one point she was a Jedi, but you know, obviously she's tapped into the Force. Like I always thought about, there are definitely Force users that are neither Sith or Jedi. They just somehow were able to find a way to tap into it and use it. And so I kind of viewed her as that kind of person.
The way I like to view the Force and like all these different, you know, because there's different Force religions and Force cults out there, and you know, you got the Night Sisters who have, you know, they exhibit the Force in a more magical way than the Jedi do, and the Sith are more brutalistic, and there's different ways of tapping into this Force, but ultimately it's the same source of power throughout the galaxy. No matter what you call it, it's the same source of power, and it's basically like one big magic system that anyone in the galaxy can interact with to some degree. And with this Force healer, I don't think that she was a Jedi. I didn't get that vibe, especially because what it seemed to me was happening was that I don't know how to describe it. It seemed like she was amateurish, you know, like it was just like an amateur thing that she was practicing. And sometimes she said it, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. With Cassian, it actually did work, and probably it worked well because he was very surprised by how quickly he was able to regain motion in his arm after the fact.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't catch that, or I didn't think that she was necessarily a Jedi previously.
Yeah, pretty much exactly like what I was thinking, was that she was somebody that somewhere along the lines of her life found a way to tap into the Force. And, you know, that could have been in a many number of ways that you kind of, you know, named. You know, I mean, yeah, sure, there's, you know, Force cults and all that stuff, but who knows? Maybe there was just a group of people that got together, they figured out that they have this different connection and learned how to use it together, you know, that outside of being a cult. You know, yeah, definitely it was interesting to see the Force being used like that within this show. And I don't necessarily think that it was out of character for Andor, because I mean, you know, at the end of the day, Andor is still within the Star Wars universe, and I don't think it detracted from the show. You know, we did get that important moment out of, you know, him being a messenger, that confirmation pretty much. And yeah, that it really does, it makes you look back onto the show, and it makes you look at Rogue One, and you realize, like, yeah, this guy really is a messenger.
So let's jump forward to episode 8, which is the big Gorman massacre episode. It's been teased throughout the season. In the first week, we had Krennic, you know, expressing that, like, we really need this Gorman calcite, which is a mineral that's found deep beneath the crust of this planet. But to get to that, it will mean destabilizing the planet and killing the entire ecosystem, including everyone who lives there. But, you know, several years pass. They try to determine if it's viable to, you know, not destabilize the planet and, you know, find another alternative, which I guess was nice-ish. But eventually, they needed what they needed, and there was, you know, nothing stopping them, really.
Right. How hard did they try? That's the question.
They definitely, yeah, we don't know. We actually don't know how hard they tried. They did say that they had their people on Edu, which is like Galen Erso and all them, trying to find alternatives for the panels for the weapon. But ultimately, they needed calcite for whatever reason. And it only seems to have existed on the planet Gorman. And Yeah, so after that point, we had Syril Karn who go infiltrate the Gorman people, try to start inciting a rebellion so that they could bring Axis out of hiding. And I love that arc too because, we have Andor coming as a fashion designer. And little does Syril know, he's like walking by Cassian for like a couple days.
Yeah, for real.
And then by the time of the Gorman massacre, Syril is seemingly a changed person. Before, this was all about, like he's doing his job to the utmost, like he's definitely going to bring these rebels down. Empire's the greatest, blah, blah, blah. These people are, overblowing the scenario and whatever. But as soon as, he sees what's really happening, that they're inciting violence within the Gorman people. They're laying out a trap for them. They have ships coming to descend to mine the planet.
Right.
Syril's a different person. What do you guys think about Syril's, change of heart? Is it deserved? Is he worthy of forgiveness at all?
I have no mercy. I don't think that his blindly being that's incompetent. He willingly blocked out what he wanted to block out, and until it was
blind loyalty.
Until it was unavoidable, that's when he confronted it. Too little, too late, man. Like, you're infiltrating this group. He knew what he was doing, right? And he just convinced himself that they were the bad guys. It's difficult to talk about that episode and that arc without getting too analogous to what's going on in certain parts of our world. But it was a little scary, I won't lie. It hit home a little bit harder to kind of see this unfurl. And for me, Syril is like too many people out there that are just willingly being ignorant and then will be indignant when it happens. Like, oh no, what? No, this is not what I wanted. It's just... He's so believable. He's such a believable character, but I will say I strongly dislike him, and ethically, I cannot forgive him. I also didn't forgive Jaime Lannister. So,
okay, fair enough. I like the qualifier there. Anthony, how do you feel about Syril?
I don't think it's that easy. I don't think it's as easy as saying black and white with Syril. I really do not think that it's that easy to be like, yes. The thing is, a lot of his character is believable because blind loyalty is something that is, very, it's very real. And
it's a human trait.
Exactly. It is a human trait. The thing that was different about Syril is that there were a lot of people who knew what was happening and they actively turned their eye to it. But the thing is that Syril was sold something and he believed it. And when his eyes finally opened that they sold him BS, he realized, essentially like, what did I do? And that's why he was out there in that crowd. He could have easily just hid in that room, with the other people. But no, he was out there really witnessing the lie that he was being sold. And I felt bad for him because, he was being strung along by also, Dedra. And I understand your, definitely issues and any anger towards Dedra, but Syril was definitely somebody who thought he was doing his job. That has always been who Syril has been. I think ever since from the beginning of the series, that is always how he's been. Of course, he is the portrayal of an antagonistic character, but I like that he exists because he is not a black or a white character. He is somebody that exists within the gray. I don't completely dislike him for that reason, but he does do things that piss me off, like all caution went to the wind as soon as he saw Cassie, and I'm like, oh dude, like the sympathy that I felt for you in that moment is just gone now. My jaw definitely dropped when he took a blaster bolt to the temple.
So I want to hop on and I see what you're saying, Rich, in the sense that this is a person who had every opportunity to see the truth. But I don't know that that's necessarily true, based on his position within the hierarchy of the Empire.
We only saw him being gaslighted a couple of times, all right? But imagine he's getting home from work every single day, right? He's with Dedra, right? Like, they're recapping their days and they're talking things over. Like, we saw a couple of instances of him being blindly loyal, but he was sitting, like, doing all these things and openly listening to Dedra gaslight him with no attempt for thought of his own. As a teacher, it's really hard for me to sit there and be okay with a person who is, I believe, to be negligent, right? Like, that we have a responsibility to understand the world around us. And he was negligent in his personal relationship and in his political kind of loyalties. Like, he openly wanted that life, right? Because his mom had made his life so terrible that he was just so desperate to have this relationship and have good standing that I think he was willfully ignorant.
I kind of agree with both of your sentiments, and I'm going to give the middle ground opinion here. What I will say about Syril is that every job that he's had up to this point has been behind a computer. This is his first real field assignment that he is seemingly doing a really good job at, and he's getting accolades, and he's receiving praise from the top. Even Partagaz is, like, well done, Syril, and I think that does chemically do something to the endorphin center in your brain that rewires you a little bit. And you're right that he should have realized at this point that, they're making stuff up. These rebels aren't actually, as bad as they're made out to be. Which I think that he realizes by the time, because a year passes between the last time that we saw him first begin his spycraft on Gorman, and by the time that we see his character in this Gorman episode, he's changed. He clearly likes the rebels. He clearly feels closer to them than he does Dedra. And I think that there is even hinted love between him and the daughter of that rebel leader. I forget their names. But, like, there's that scene where, like, she slaps him. And it almost felt intimate, like, no. Like, he even grabs her arm and stuff. And it's like, I think that he had changed sometime between then and there. But he hadn't fully believed that the Empire would be capable of actual genocide. And I think that because he's been behind the desk and he's believed in order for so long, that this was, like, something inconceivable for him to come up with. So I don't think... I kind of sit in between you guys. Like, I do think that, yes, he should have figured this out long before now. But I don't think he's an irredeemable character. And I think that, just... Obviously, it's kind of like Padme saying there's still good in him. There was still good in him. There was still good in him, even though he was the worst person in the galaxy for like 19 years.
Well, I don't know, man. Like, I really do. I understand the sentiment that he should have realized something. Maybe he should have paid a little bit more attention to the writing on the walls. But I'm definitely not sold on him. Like, yeah, he was, he was in this relationship with Dedra, but she definitely was not sharing anything with him at all. She was not sharing that level of stuff to him.
I agree with that because he had no idea what the heck they were doing there.
Yeah, exactly. Like, like he was in the dark, and when he realized that there were ships coming down to mine minerals, like he went as far as to, like, choke Dedra out to figure out what it was that they were doing. So, like, the fact that he went that far and was like, I'm done with this woman, and he like put physical hands to, like, figure out what it was that they were doing because he knew that something terrible was happening. Yeah, okay, come on. Like, that's...
I forgot about that part, and that just makes him... I actually had blocked that out. I'm sorry. For me, that's inexcusable.
Okay,
that's
sure.
Like I forgot. Like I forgot. That's another reason why I dislike him. Like that's you don't. I mean that. I'm sorry. That's to me.
No, no. I get it. I get where you're coming from.
That's a fair. That's a
like
fair.
Exactly.
Then he goes out. It's just, and I get it. Look, I also dislike Ben Solo. I don't buy Ben Solo's turn. I'm sorry, you killed Han. There are just some things that are unforgivable for me, and I just thought that one. See, here's my thing. If you're on the fence about Syril, once he chokes Dedra out, I just feel like that's, and like that was real. What was haunting about that was the fear in her eyes, right? Like it. Obviously just excellent job by the actor, but it just really conveyed, like, what's crazy is she's in charge of this crazy operation and he made her helpless in that moment, right? Because he felt small, he needed to make himself feel bigger and in control, and the way he went about it is
That's an interesting. I hadn't considered that point of view there. So
my question is, and I get where you're coming from, definitely in that moment, but would it have been bad had he killed her in that moment? Because your boy Andor was about to snipe her, so like she was on death row, or she was pretty much close to dying in that moment anyway, because Andor was about to snipe her. We understand we understand the
that's an interesting moral quandary, actually. Yeah,
I mean, dude, like, is it okay because the hero did it, and it would have been bad because he
saved her life by choking her out. It's crazy.
He did pull her in, in that moment. That was weird, but I mean, he definitely had that anger, but she would have, she
would have been dead.
She would have been dead. But I'm not saying that, like, he did it to save her. I'm just saying it,
right,
that, like, what's the difference between a villain killing her and a hero killing her,
Well, I mean, if you're talking about end result there, but I mean, in terms of the characters.
Morality.
In terms of the characters, he choked out his fiance, essentially, a quasi-wife, because he realized that he let himself get deluded into living a lie with her and felt small. Whereas Andor was trying to kill someone who was willfully helping the Empire to commit genocide. So, I mean, like, there's a big difference there. I think if she dies by Andor's hands, I think it's a good thing.
Let me close that gap a little bit. Maybe because Syril realized the writing on the wall, and he wanted to find out what it was that was going on. Like, I get your gripe, but at the end of the day, in a morality sense, it's bad, right? In a day-to-day sense, it is bad, of course. I'll always say that it's bad. But the thing is that because you said yourself that Andor was going to kill somebody that was actively helping the Empire. Syril was confronting somebody who was actively helping the Empire incite violence for their own gain, and he hit that realization. He obviously, like, that's quick fury right there, because he might have felt small in that moment, but the thing is that he was sold on a lie, and when he realized that he was sold out on a lie and that a lot of innocent people were about to get killed, I would be pissed off too.
So in that moment, he actually breaks with the Empire. That's the moment where he stops wanting what the Empire wants, because she tells him that we're going home heroes, and then he realizes that's not what I want. Like, this is not what I want. And so it's an interesting. I see both sides of this argument, and I think that goes to show just how good the writing of the show is. I think all of us will agree that he's a well-written character, and he is morally complex. And the fact that we've been talking about him now for like 20 minutes is a good gauge for that.
Sorry,
I think
in real life, I'm very forgiving. When discussing characters, I'm essentially Judge Dredd. I am
okay,
and I'm unforgiving. It's terrible.
Oh man, I would love to continue this conversation, but we have more Andor to talk about. Let's
We do.
really quick final thoughts on the Gorman front, specifically, like how they were capable of showcasing this trap that they, eventually that led to mass genocide.
You know what was crazy about that was that it really did. It gave me even more like World War II vibes. Like it was so well. Those scenes were so well like constructed and written that like it really blew my mind. That just the whole season, the season as a whole was amazing. But like the fact that I was like, oh my gosh, like you get to the second part of the season, you're like, oh my gosh, it gets even better. How's that even possible?
Yeah, the moment that they stopped chanting and they started singing their national anthem or their anthem, whatever. We are the goal. My heart sank because it's not gonna end well. It's just gonna be the worst thing ever. And these poor people who they're just trying to live. They're trying to be who they've always been. Were very quickly snuffed out. Rich, what are your thoughts on this episode?
I think I said it last time, gripping, amazing television, but I don't want to do this more than I don't want.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I can't watch this week in, week out.
Yeah, no, it just, and I watched it like 3 times or whatever, as I normally do, and I found it harder and harder. Each time I'd see,
because you knew what was coming.
I'd see a little
right?
bit.
Yeah.
I see somebody's reaction in the crowd that was a little different. It's just, I don't know. Like it's really well done, and like Anthony said, yeah, World War II vibes. I'm gonna be a little bit possibly more divisive and say that it's reflective of a lot of things I'm seeing around the world currently, and maybe that made it much more chilling. Like to the point where, when everything was going down in California and Los Angeles, I'm reading the New York Times in the car, and I yell out, does he think this is bleeping gore? Like, this is not Star Wars. We know what's happening. Like, you're not planets away. And I'll leave it at that. That's a real reaction I had after seeing the episode. And it's something that Star Wars has never made me feel. And kudos to them for doing it. But moving forward, I want some fun stuff. I want like some Padawans to fall into some mischief because they, I want some little kids to get on a ship and accidentally take off into space. Want a little bit more saccharine with my Star Wars.
Got it. Yeah, no, I hear you. All right, let's jump into the next episode. Rich, you said earlier that you didn't think that the Senate would ever entertain you. And I growing up with the prequels, where the Senate was always just kind of the boring scenes, I will probably have some newfound respect like going into those scenes just because I know what's capable in the Senate at this point. And ultimately, like I felt like what Mothma was going through, like over the course of this season, as she's trying to, get people onto her cause and like she's trying to like pull more attention to Gorman and all that, and people were just, pushing her away, whatever, until, this episode where she finally breaks with decorum and decides to, tell it like it is. This is genocide. You're all propping up this monster, Palpatine, who's going to come for you all in the end. And she's entirely right to do so, and she's entirely right in general. And it's such a good scene. The tension in the air, the other senators who give up their time to speak so that she can have this is so brilliant. And yeah, no, man, it's so good. I would watch a show of, Mothma in the Senate. I just feel like it's such a strong, maybe not a whole show, but like it if that was the level of intrigue that we got from the proceedings in the Star Wars Senate, I would love to see more of that.
Yeah, I've watched C-SPAN when I was younger and weirder. I would totally watch like a C-SPAN-esque Galactic Senate hearings. I mean, it's nerdy, but I did like the seating of the time, and in, Law 17 BC, the precedent was said that a senior member concede to, and just the little tiny loopholes that they were pulling and how that's kind of stuff that it reminded me of in some ways, like the filibustering that we have, in the U.S. Senate. or in the House of Representatives sometimes,
Sure, yeah.
where it's like this totally arcane, like weird thing, and they're like, yeah, by the way, so we're just gonna talk for 27 hours because it's a rule
Absolutely
there,
insane.
that we're allowed to
Yeah.
break. So I thought that was like that made it even better for me, and I actually also liked when Mothma was asking Bale if he could vouch for his people. And he's like, yeah, of course you could vouch for them. And she's like, do you know them? And he's like, no, of course I can't. I don't know them. I can't know them. And I thought that was top notch. Like, I can vouch for them as much as I can, but I have to protect myself. And there's no way I can actually know that these are people you can trust.
Which is why Luthen was so important in that moment, because he realized that, Bale's team was compromised.
Yeah.
Anthony, what are your thoughts on this episode?
Thought it was really cool. I liked Mon Mothma's speech. I would also kind of agree that we could get I know you said like a whole series, but maybe like a limited series of Mon Mothma, maybe in the moment where she kind of, I mean, it might have been for a while, but like disillusioned with whatever the Empire was selling and her introduction to Luthen. That'd be cool.
Yeah, that would be cool, because we didn't actually see like how they were first introduced. So that would be pretty neat. What did we think of the extraction with Cassian? Leading up to that point, we have the Empire, like ISB specifically, going crazy trying to like shut her down, and they finally do shut her down. But she said what she needed to say.
Yeah.
I loved that so much, because that speech goes basically viral, and everyone in the galaxy hears it. And then you have this race for Cassian to get her and her aide to this meeting point somewhere else in the galaxy. And I don't know if you guys know, I might have brought it up on a previous show. There's kind of like a secret episode after this point that you can, watch. If you decide to jump onto Star Wars Rebels at any point, you can watch Season 3, Episode 18, Secret Cargo. And it's the follow-up to what happens in the events of this episode. So we have Mon Mothma, who just gave her speech and just got away from the Empire, being shipped over to the rebellion, and the rebels are gearing her up to speak to the disparate rebel groups. And that's the speech that she gives that like starts the Rebel Alliance, like fully, because at this point they haven't really formed that unique alliance, even though they're all kind of over the galaxy. So this episode with Mothma giving that speech leads pretty closely into what happens in the Rebels episode Secret Cargo, Season 3, Episode 18. Not as closely as the final episode of Andor Season 2 leans into Rogue One, but the connections are definitely there, and you will definitely experience more about what's happening in the galaxy and how the Rebels came together if you watch those two episodes back to back.
Right. No, that's cool. I like when they do connections like that.
Yeah. And yeah, let's jump into the final 3 episodes, because they all kind of happen really quickly. Luthen is caught.
Yeah.
What did we think of the Dedra and Luthen scene?
As soon as she went in, like, I knew it. I was like, yeah. I mean, but he knew it. He also knew it. He knew that time was coming, and he felt it in that moment.
He had no reservations about him surviving the war. He knew that he was in too deep. He had too many holes in the galaxy, basically. Too many people that he was spying on for it not to fall back on him eventually. He was kind of like too big of a pawn not to topple. And yeah, we finally get the name drop of the Death Star. Like Lonnie finds out that this energy program that the Emperor's been running for a couple of years isn't actually an energy program. He's building a super weapon. And they don't know what the super weapon is capable of. They just know it's big and bad. And he's been working on it for years. What did we think of Lonnie's final moments?
That was kind of crazy, because it really shows how similar Luthen and Andor are. Like, they'll sever some loose ends, man. And Lonnie was a loose end. I had a feeling that was going to be his fate.
Rich, what do you think of Lonnie's end?
Yeah, I kind of always had a feeling that it wasn't going to end well for him. He tried showing a backbone at some point, but it was kind of too late, and he was kind of in too deep. I don't trust a man with a mustache like that to begin with. So, our listeners may not know, but I am mustache-less. I refuse to sport a mustache, as it calls my character into question. And I felt the same way about Lonnie. No, but
Hold on. We have to also express to the audience that the other two of us do have mustaches. So, what does that say about our characters, Rich? You gotta expand on that a little bit.
You guys do have beards, so I mean, I do think that it means you guys are big Rhydonium hounds, like huge, always huffing Rhydonium, just all the time.
Rhydonium huffers.
But
Save the dream.
I don't think I liked Lonnie. I think I kind of expected this to happen, right? I mean, this is kind of what eventually has to happen to spies, right?
They're going to be burned eventually.
You know, I mean, and you kind of get into
you
kind of he signed up for it, right? Essentially.
I think we wanted him to get free. You know, like as we're watching, you're just like, oh yeah, he's got a family, he's got a wife and a kid, and you see that like Yavin, you know, like that like calmness, like hit him as he like gets some sense of relief in that moment, and then the next we know is, you know, he's dead. Yeah. And then pretty much immediately after that, the dominoes start falling. Dedra comes to his office space, and it's such a fantastic scene. Those two characters having never interacted before. Yeah, I love that. And she asks him, like, are all of these items legit? Like, are these actual things? And he goes, there's only two items of questionable provenance. And he's talking about himself and her, you know, like that's what he's talking about. It's just like, I'm not really named Luthen Rail, and you're not really here to, you know, look at my artifacts, you know, like it's so good.
Bro, when she pulled out that Star Path unit, I was like,
yeah, it's just like,
I was like, man, that's the callback to season 1.
I would have, if I was Luthen and I wanted to play that off a little more, I would have been like, vintage. The Empire's only been around for 19 years. Everything else in this place is like thousands of years old. Yeah, so Luthen stabs himself with that Nautilin bleeder, which might not even be real. I think that's what got to me at the end of the episode. I was just like, is the Nautilin bleeder real? I need to know.
Well, it made him bleed, all right.
But is he Nautilin? I don't think so. What did we think of Clea's arc in these last episodes? Because she's always been this character in the background that has shown a little bit more gumption as the show's going on. What are our thoughts?
I wish the series was longer. I don't love exposition dumps almost like that, or like the need for flashback. I got like Naruto PTSD from flashback episodes. So I understand that they had to do it, right? Because they obviously started the series while we already have them in a relationship.
Yeah, and we don't understand the relationship, so they kind of have to explain it a little bit.
You know, and I get it. I mean, it's believable. It gives us a reason why Luthen left, although he definitely doesn't. Although he does treat her like a daughter, he also doesn't treat her like a daughter, right? Like, I would probably not put my son in some of the perilous situations and ask him if he's ready to set off a bridge and kill people on Naboo. It seemed like that. I think that was Naboo. It felt like Naboo.
It was confirmed to be Naboo. And it makes sense because Palpatine is from Naboo, so he wanted to do a terrorist attack in his homeland.
So I mean, that Clea was his daughter when it was convenient.
Yeah, when it was convenient. I like that. Yeah,
that was his line. Oh, yeah, something that we can. Let's finish this up here. But something that we forgot to mention was Andor had pulled from Gorman K2SO.
Yes, yeah. So that's one of the better things about this last arc is that the vibes are a little bit different. And I think that's specifically to do with the fact that everyone's now on Yavin, and they now have another team member that adds a lot of levity to the show. And I'm glad that K2SO wasn't a thing for the entirety of the series. Or like the majority of the series, I mean. Just because I would have loved him. You know, like I would have loved him from the first episode. But I like seeing Andor exist before K2SO, because now that I know that with K2SO, he almost seems like a more complete person, if that makes sense. Like there was something missing from him.
Yeah, he was definitely missing something. Like before K2SO, Andor was B2 emo. Like he was being too emo.
Yeah, he definitely replaced B2 emo way too quickly. I'm glad that B2 emo got a final happy moment at the end there. You know, he's with his friends and he's with Bix and
which
Andor's daughter and all that.
That last moment was kind of crazy too.
Yeah.
And
I feel like we're skipping a whole bunch, but we're coming up on like a minute or an hour and 20, and so I'm just trying to like all the best scenes are just piling up in my head right now.
Well, really a lot. Like, I mean, we covered a lot of it. You know, Luthen, he stabs himself, and Kleya pretty much takes it upon herself to, you know, kill him while he's in the hospital because, you know, she didn't want him. Like, there was no way that she was going to be able to extract him, and so, you know, that's something that he would have wanted because he didn't want to be captured, and so she took it upon herself to do that. And Andor comes in for one last extraction, which is to get Kleya out of Coruscant, which initially she didn't want to.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about Kleya and Yavin and like why she's so apprehensive to make that trip to Yavin. What are your thoughts on that? Like, why was she so almost like haughty when it comes to being taken to Yavin? How did you interpret that?
Well, I know that side wasn't too partial with Luthen. I guess because he still kind of had a little bit of like an extremist like type of mentality. Not as bad as Saul, but he was almost like his own like little, you know, I guess rebel outfit that didn't.
Yeah, he was a rebel cell that didn't actually become part of the alliance.
Right. Same thing with Saul. And Saw and Luthen weren't, you know, they weren't really buddies. There was this, I guess, kind of, you know, I guess respect, but it was still like, you know, you're crazy. That, you know, like Luthen was like, yeah, this guy's crazy, and like he realized that.
Rich, what are your thoughts on Kleya's apprehension to Yavin lifestyle?
I don't think that that's not her world. That's not her universe. Living comfortably in one place with people and being her real self without Luthen around, I think is just something that she just can't. She's not been her real self with anyone but him. And even then, she seemed guarded in some ways, right? Because the cause was the most important thing. So yeah, I don't think that she could just now fall into this idea that there's this whole group and that she's part of this group. They were catalysts. They're not part of this.
They weren't conformists. Yeah. They weren't conformists. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's a good point. What I found was interesting was that everyone kept saying, like Cassian and Kleya both heavily believed that the rebels on Yavin wouldn't exist had Luthen not been who he was. And it almost makes me wonder, like, where did the money go when, you know, they stole it off of Aldhani? What happened after, you know, Cassian left Yavin earlier in this season and left that, like, crazy rebel cell to die there? Did he get that message to Luthen to say, like, hey, this is actually a pretty good place for a base? And, you know, like, because, like, there's a lot of coincidences and stuff where Luthen's kind of at the center of everything. Like, he's an axis, you know? Like, is he responsible for the formation of the rebel base on Yavin? I'm curious about that, and I don't think that we have an answer.
I like that you brought it here, because something that kind of made me think about how the setup of the show. Remember, you know, I was saying originally that Andor was supposed to be more seasons. I think they were looking at 5 seasons. And so maybe that's what they were like looking to explore, maybe to expand a little bit more on those like year gaps. But I guess they settled for something a little bit more condensed, which, I mean, even with it being condensed, we got something that was really good. But I mean, exactly. And like another reason why I'm glad you say that. Another thing that was never resolved that was brought in the first season of Andor, his sister. What happened there?
So I don't think that was ever going to be resolved. Just based on comments from Tony Gilroy. He's basically said that, like, this is just a pipe dream that Andor's always had, basically. I don't think those are his words exactly, but it's that drive is what ultimately first gets him involved in everything, basically.
Right. But it was kind of like never addressed again, though. It was just like literally the first episode, that was it.
And they actually do show the sister in the final episode, but it's almost like a symbolic viewing of the sister. So I don't know. She may still be out there somewhere, but I think let's bring this podcast to a close, guys. Final thoughts, Rich. Why do you hate this show so much?
I hate it because it doesn't give me the warm fuzzies. I don't get to see Ewoks dancing and using the helmets of presumably decapitated stormtroopers to make beautiful, beautiful music with ghosts. I Star Wars is not supposed to make me think the adult things most of the time, right? And I know that obviously it's made for fantastic television. It's definitely the best Star Wars TV show that's out there. All respect to Obi-Wan, and I know Obi-Wan season 2 is going to be even better. It's going to be even better than Book of Boba Fett, baby. It's going to focus on one character, maybe, and not.
It already was better than Book of Boba Fett, to be fair.
I mean, but at the same time, I don't like. I'm not going to. My son and I aren't going to watch this. Not yet. Right? It's too adult, and it's the first for me kind of gatekeepy thing. Look, there's 3 of us here, totaling probably almost 100 years of age. But Star Wars is for kids, right? It's that hope, and it's that beautiful hope in the galaxy. It's the hope in believing in people, and that's not what Andor is about. And it's okay, and it belongs, and it needs to be there, right? But it doesn't scream Star Wars to me, and I think that's what makes it so good.
All right. A little twist there. Anthony, final thoughts?
The worst. No, I agree with Rich, and I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I really do believe that Andor is the best Star Wars TV show. And that's even with the existence of The Mandalorian. Look, I love The Mandalorian, but The Mandalorian is a lot of fan service. This is not fan service at all. I mean, I don't know if you know the amount of people that I've sung the praises of Andor to, and they're like, nah, it's kind of boring. I'm like, dude, like...
Did you sing it like, we are the gold?
Yes, yeah, exactly. I was standing on a statue and everything, just waving a flag, and
Andor flag.
But yeah, no, it is easily my favorite Star Wars TV show. Like, it just blew my mind the way that it connected so much. And even though that there's still stuff that was not explained, it did a lot, man. And I'm proud to say that a show that I never asked for became a show that I'm asking more of, that I want more of, and that I am going to be too emo that this is over.
This is the top 5 MCU project for me. No, it's top tier Star Wars. Like, even if you compare it to the films, you've never watched, like, hypothetically, you've never watched the original trilogy, prequels, sequels, whatever you want. You watch the best of the best, Empire Strikes Back for the first time, and then you watch, say, episodes 8 and 9 of Andor. Pound for pound, Andor is the stronger, technically, thing. So I do believe that those 2 hours of Andor are the strongest Star Wars that we've ever received. Whether it's like Star Wars is up for debate. And I do hold the films up to a higher level just because of, like what they represent and everything. But I'm just, like if we're taking nostalgia and we're taking, the years and production quality that, existed at the times that they were produced in, I do think Andor is probably the strongest thing that we've ever received. And that's good. more of that. You know, it doesn't have to be, you know, this maturity level. It doesn't have to be TVMA. It doesn't have to be extremely dark or anything like that. But if we can get this quality of writing in another Star Wars project down the line, I'd be a happy camper, and the future would look bright for Star Wars. So that's how I feel. And if you don't like it, you can go away. Yeah, no, I really like Andor, guys. Yeah, thanks so much for listening to us here for our 125th episode of Project Geekology. My name is Dakota again, and we're joined as always with Anthony and Rich, and we had a great time talking about the final 2 episodes of Andor. There's not going to be a normal episode next week. I'm going to be away, but we're going to be picking back up the following week with something hopefully very good.
To be determined. Either was it, you know, keep an eye out for, you know, maybe an update on Twitter, or you know, just keep an eye out for an episode drop.
Keep an eye out to the sky. You might see like a red cape.
We're dropping a Vine. We'll be
tights.
dropping a Vine on Wednesday at 4:35. So just tune into Vine.
Do it for the gram, guys. You guys want to do Superman?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm down for that, man.
Yeah, let's do the new Superman movie that's coming out. It should be coming out next week. We will cover it the following week.
Superman.
For our next episode. You will believe a man can fly.
Rhydonium.
Bye, guys.
Bye.